All right, folks, and with the latest news on Bryan Mbeumo being linked to Newcastle United as their new target for right wing position. Is it a bluff? Is it real? Are there other targets that Newcastle United could be looking for? Let's find out here on Toon Tactics TV. All right, folks. How are you all doing? I hope you are well. Good evening to you all, or good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My apologies again for my lateness. I had some serious technical issues literally as I was coming on today. Everything just stopped working. The mic stopped working. The videos, the camera stopped working. But it doesn't matter. We are here and we are here now. Do let me know. Good to see some folks coming in. Let me know in the comments where you're coming from. And let me also know in the comments who's your ideal right winger, right wing forward for Newcastle United as we delve into what is going to be an exciting search, an exciting hunt for Newcastle's new right wing forward, new right winger. That's what I am looking forward to, and I hope you are too. So let's get things underway. I wanna preface this by saying that, man, I did tons of research in terms of what Newcastle need, what Newcastle are likely to be looking for in terms of this position, because it's so important. We all know, for instance, the major problems that we're having in terms of our creativity from that right wing position forward, having someone that can possibly dictate the play and all that. You know, we love Jacob Murphy, and but he has his limitations. He's not going to be always necessarily dribbling past people or just giving us the upgrade, the technical upgrade that we need in order for us to go forward. So before we get before we get into it, in terms of start talking about names and players and stuff like that, I want to be able to set the agenda, and I want to for the recruitment profile. And I want to be able to say first, thank you to Kev Lawson. You guys will find Kev Lawson on X as well. He reminded me and he showed me this recruitment profile that he showed from last year. And it's a general profile that he was obviously kind of in terms of what the type of for players in general that Newcastle were looking for. So it's not just for right wingers, but like for left wingers, forwards, defenders. And it will help us essentially narrow the search in terms of what Newcastle are looking for. So for instance, they have to be tall, 180 centimeters plus. So that's about 5'9" plus. Fast, hard-working players with a technical level, with a high technical level, not just a technical level, a high technical level. We need those players in order for the overall way of the team to progress forward. And we know we've seen that in terms of the players that have come in Bruno Gomes, Isak, Tony, Barnes, Gordon, all these guys, the ceiling level of our team has been raised. Premier League experience. Now we know who's very big on Premier League experience, obviously Eddie Howe. And the big major reason for that is it significantly lowers the risk of that signing not working out, and increases the signing that player will probably do very well at Newcastle United because they are Premier League certified player. We talked about Mark Gahey. Why does he like Mark Gahey so much? There's this defender overseas, there's that defender overseas. Mark Gahey will essentially be a plug and play player. He's a certified Premier League player who'd go from Crystal Palace to Newcastle and can start the next day. So plug and play literally means when you plug in your phone, you plug in your console, and it just starts working. So that's what I think Eddie Howe's looking for. Now, I'm not going to kind of discuss the disadvantage of that. I just kind of wanted to show why that's a criteria for Eddie Howe. Experience of European competitions as well, kind of again an indicator of the high level that they've played at. And obviously players aged 27 and below, that's a club preference. So we want to be able, we're not going to be signing 35-year-olds to play as a right wing forward. That would not be beneficial to Newcastle. And under so for 21 for 21 players, under 21 players, it's a club preference, and it's even more so now with Paul Mitchell. Where you will, I think, especially in this coming January transfer window, we're going to see more and more like 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds being bought, especially by Paul Mitchell. I think that's going to be a big thing, as well as obviously players being sold by Newcastle United. But so that's one way of kind of that's like the overarching arc of the players that they're looking forward, that Newcastle are looking for. And thank you again, Kev Lawson. I'm going to make sure I put his stuff in the description for you guys. He's a fantastic. He's from StatsBomb as well, so he gives us incredibly good statistics on Newcastle players, teams, but also just in general about what's going on in football. So let's get specific. Let's get specific about the type of right wing forward that Newcastle are likely, or right winger or right wing forward. And I'm gonna touch on that point, why there's a difference, why Newcastle are doing that. I'm going to, before we do that, and I'll go through with you guys, go through the comments. Oh, I did ask guys, who was you guys at the beginning of the program? Who is you guys' preference for the next right winger at Newcastle United? Who would you want it to be? We've got Connor on the go. Are you doing Toon Talks? Hope you're well, sir. David Martinez or Rayan Vitor? Ooh, I haven't heard of David Martinez. I have a little bit of Rayan Vitor. Interesting. I looked them up. Tino Able to Toon. Big up to you, sir. Do you know what? I've been hoping to connect to connect with you, sir. So really good to see you, sir. Really good to see you. Really good to see you. And I will try to connect with you on X. I've been hoping to speak with you. Signing Mbuemo won't do any harm for me. Well, we do talk about Mr. Mbuemo here today. A little bit of a spoiler alert, but it's, for me not to talk about him, especially in light of today's news, will be neglectful. So we're not going to do that. Connor, Tino issue is Brentford wants 70 million now for Mbuemo, reports say. Ooh, well, we'll get into it, Connor. We'll get into it, and I wanna get you guys' take on something about why we even know this information in the first place. But back to it. We just talked about the overall profile of players Newcastle are going for. Now, for specifically the right wing position, I'm going to be looking at. I don't know. Here we go. So I'm going to be looking at, and it's partly because of a couple of things actually, why I'm specifically looking at these attributes. And I know there's other things that we can look for. There's a lot of characteristics and attributes you can look in players, but I'm going to explain shortly as to why I'm looking at these specific ones. So ball retention is specifically for right wing forwards. Ball retention is a bit too high. Let me get here we go. Is it a bit too high? Is it a bit too low? Whoop, that's too close. All right, let me make sure you guys can see this clearly. So excellent. So ball retention, progressive carrying, dribbling, progressive passing, chance creation, goal efficiency, and goal threat. Now, as we kind of go through this, we're going to know that not every player can have all of these attributes, and sometimes for very, very different reasons. And we're going to go through that. But I think we're going to also understand there is going to be certain characteristics and certain players that we see more than others, mainly because of the team that they play for. So a little bit of a spoiler alert when I talk about Bryan Mbeumo, for instance, we'll notice that his progressive carrying isn't as high as other players. It's very decent. It's very low. However, if you compare him to other attacking wingers and midfielders, but if you compare Bryan Mbeumo to actual forwards, he is in the 90 percentile for being able to carry forward. And what does that mean? That means that due to Brentford's style of play, Mbuemo's role in Brentford is different compared to perhaps what a Olise at Crystal Palace or a Madueke at Chelsea was. where Mbuemo pretty much plays, in my opinion, almost like a hybrid second striker to Wisa, and we'll talk about that as well. So when you compare his progressive carries, positionally where he is on the field is very much in the final third. So if you measure his progressive carries, particularly in the final third, and ball received actually in the final third, he's in the 90th percentile. But if you compare progressive carries in comparison to wingers and in comparison to attacking midfielders, he's like he looks very, very average. And that's just due to position and the style, what he's asked to do, the style of play of Brentford, and what Bryan Mbeumo is being asked to do in his role. So we're going to have to try. There's a lot of moving parts to it, and we're going to try to kind of explain and see certain things. But we're also going to get into the specifics of what all these things mean, because I just want to, especially for myself, I don't want to just say, oh, ball retention this and progressive carry that, and we don't all fully know and understand what all these things means. Like, me including that, to kind of make sure I go into the specifics of it, so I understood what I'm talking about, as well as what I think Eddie Howe, Paul Mitchell are looking for. So breaking down some of these things: ball retention, individual player. So ball retention is when a player has the ability to keep possession of the ball. So it's the time he spends on the ball, the passes completed, and touches. So if you've got a player that has a high, is high in the percentile for ball retention, and that player is able to dictate the game of the play. So that's important to remember for ball retention. Progressive passing, essentially, is a metric that measures a player's ability to pass the ball forwards to the opposition goal. And a high number of progressive passes shows that a player is able to effectively pass the ball and create chances. So we're gonna look at that thing. Dribbling, is he able to get passes, man? Is he successful at doing that? Is he successful at the distance carried in terms of that as well? Those type of players are likely to create chances. Those type of players are likely to be very dangerous. And speaking of chances, chance creation is another kind of aspect, is another attribute that we're going to look at. Chance creation, it covers is the ability of the player to be able to create scoring opportunity players for their teammates. And so what does that mean? Key passes, assists, expected assists, all these shot creations, all these are, so someone who has a high metric for creating chances is able to create a lot of opportunities for their teammates. And that is something that Newcastle United really need, especially down that right wing side. Progressive carrying, essentially being able to take the ball from that measures the player's ability to carry the ball forwards towards the opposition goal. So from point A to point B. And sometimes when people talk about progressive carries, it does broadly cover dribbling as well. And what it also shows is a player's ability to have technique to be able to carry the ball. Why is it important? And because it's one of those things I'm going to emphasize today in terms of progressive carries. Why is progressive carries really important for a right wing forward? Is because that player in two aspects of the game. When, for instance, if Newcastle are attacking, this is the player that's likely to be able to have the ability to cause a threat, to create chances in the opposition half, and to create goal scoring opportunities for the teammates as well as from themselves. Also, if Newcastle have their back against the wall, are being attacked, this person who can carry the ball is able to provide the team relief in terms of being able to take the ball on, take possession, and carry the team the other way. Bruno Gomes does that. If you guys remember, a couple of years ago, we had St. Maximin and we had Mr. Bruce in charge. When often our team was in the final third, St. Maximin was used a lot to kind of carry the ball forward, literally from our goalpost to the other side, to the opposition half. So it's very, very important in terms of what Newcastle are looking at. It's a very important tool for any winger, any player to have. Goal efficiency measures the player's ability to convert the scoring opportunities. How effective are these guys in front of the goal? It's usually seen in percentages as well. And goal threat, slightly different. So if a player has a good goal threat, it measures the ability to score opportunities, but also shot creations, finishing ability, positioning, and movement are all part of a player being able to be threatening to the goal. It's no use of us having a right winger or a right wing forward who never gets in the right positions, whether in the box or any parts of the field that enables Newcastle to be dangerous, to look threatening, to have a threat towards the opposition, especially, for instance, in the half spaces where we lack a little bit of creativity and often rely on Bruno Gomes or Tonali to be able to break those lines, again, exposing our back line. So it would be great to have a right wing forward who can do that and get into those dangerous places for Newcastle United. Now, so that's a little rundown in terms of what these things mean, what these particular characteristics that we're going to be talking about, and what I'm talking about when we're talking about ball retention, progressive passing, all these type of things. That is what we're going to be talking about. So before I get into the next part, we're going to actually talk about the players themselves. Got a comment here from Connor. I think this has changed this season as we have changed the way. So, what has changed? Let me know what has changed, Tino. And for anybody else that's just come in, this Connor, excuse me. And if anybody else has come in, guys, do let me know in the chat who you want Newcastle to sign as your right winger / right wing forward. And folks, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. So, going on to the players, because look, there's one thing of having, kind of having a wide net. There's just thousands of right players that play in the right wing forward position, attacking midfield position in the world. But who do Newcastle want specifically? And how do we know what Newcastle want? Well, I'm going to base my search on what Newcastle did in the summer that has just gone by. And I'm going to do this. And if any of you guys remember what happened in the summer that just gone by, Newcastle's opening bid was for a man called Olise, Michael Olise. Newcastle joined Bayern Munich in their bid. They joined Bayern Munich, they joined Chelsea, they joined several other clubs for Michael Olise. Now, whether they were going to get Michael Olise or not is not the point of the discussion. But the fact that they bid for Michael Olise, I think and they bid big for him. They matched his wage demands, which were high, and they also outrightly matched because he had a clause. I think it was 60 million clause. Newcastle not only matched 60 million clause, but I think it was even just as competitive as Bayern Munich and everybody else. So from all of that said, you can tell that they were deadly. It wasn't a bluff. They were deadly serious, because if Crystal Palace accepted it, which I think they did, and they had opportunity to speak to all these clubs, obviously Bayern Munich, Chelsea, is going to be very difficult for Newcastle to compete with those guys. But Newcastle put all their money into Michael Olise at a time, I want to add, when we were still £70 million over our PSR threshold. That's another conversation. But what does Michael Olise reveal to us about what Newcastle are looking for in a right wing forward position? And as always, I want us to bear a couple of things in mind, the context of as we kind of look at these stats. At the time, I've got his 23-24 stats for Crystal Palace and his stats for Bayern Munich in 24-25. This is what Newcastle were looking at and I think a lot of the teams were looking at, not just Newcastle United, was Michael Olise is pretty much in the 95 plus percentile for progressive carrying and chance creation. And this is playing for Crystal Palace team, who obviously they had a better second half of the season, but in the first half of the season they were fighting the relegation at the time. So again, he was almost doing that Saint Maxi role for Crystal Palace, who are very defensive minded, and he was having to carry the ball from one end of the pitch to the other. So his progressive carry is very, very high. It also kind of shows you that he's got a very good technical ability. And his chance creation, again, in 90 percentile. So he was a player that was creating consistently at a high volume goal scoring opportunities for his teammates in the Premier League. And again, going back to the stats, I was got up to stats, for instance. I'm going to show you that in the Premier League, which is the toughest, league has the highest power rankings according to OptaStats in the current footballing world, and he was doing that for Crystal Palace, who are not, they're below a mid-table club at the time. What this revealed to other clubs that were looking into him, your Bayern Munich's, your Chelsea's, Newcastle, and others, is that if this guy can do it for Crystal Palace, imagine what he can do for us and what he can do in other aspects. So now going forward in 24-25, I know it's about 8-9 games deep. Not only has he maintained his chance creation, which is now in the 100% percentile for Bayern Munich, he's elite. That means he's elite currently in this current season. Is also his progressive carrying is maintained. But look at the explosion in terms of improvement in statistics in all these other areas, in progressive passing. Again, progressive passing is the ability to be able to pass pass the ball successfully in the opposition half. Ball recovery, that's if obviously the ball has been lost and he's able to get it back for us. And ball retention. Now, those are still relatively low in terms of, if you compare it to other players, somewhere in about 50-60% now. But I suggest that this is only that, especially with the ball retention aspect, is because the way Bayern Munich play, which I think that's what it is. But he's an elite right-wing forward position. So what does that reveal to us about what Newcastle are looking for? In my view, one of the key aspects that Newcastle are looking for is somebody that has a high technical ceiling with the ball, can carry the ball, can dribble past players, can take the ball from A to B, and it can be a danger and can take it especially into the penalty box or into the opposition half, and especially into the penalty box itself, to be a danger and to be a threat in the opposition half. They're looking for a right-wing forward to be able to have and to be able to create those goal-scoring opportunities for other players. And they would also love these other statistics, these other attributes, ball retention, everything else. And if you look at Olise against is grown, you will see that I think that's something that they'll look at when they're looking at their team. But Olise has these key attributes, and this is why, in my opinion, for instance, and now before I get onto the next player, again, kind of giving us an example of what they are looking for. And before we get to that player, I'm going to read the comments. So I want to keep that in mind, though, with Michael Olise: progressive carrying and chance creation. Progressive carrying and chance creation. Sheraban Dash, good. I think it's the first time I've seen you here, so apologies if you've been here before, but great to have you, and thank you. Great studio. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Jonathan Shaw, good to see you again. Elise would do just fine. Absolutely. David Eddie, good to see you again, sir. Tino, Philip, and Mbuemo, in my opinion, as I'm sure you agree, would be a terrific signing. Olise would have been a great signing. Also, Mitchell may also have someone in mind. Got a feeling he has, and so do I, Davey. And we're going to talk about it in this show. And guys, if you've just come in, I've been asking the question to folks: who would be the player that you would want to play? Who you'd want as your right wing or right wing forward for Newcastle United? Please do send that in the chat. Please do let us know. And as always, please do like, share, and subscribe. So, progressive carrying and chance creation. Now, imagine we had Michael Olise next to Isak, next to Gordon. Crazy. That would be absolutely crazy. I bet we'd have beaten Brighton with that. I'll tell you that. So those are. It gave me a little bit of a revelation, a little bit of leak of what Newcastle are looking for, and they're looking for the best. They're looking for the best, and I've seen. I'm going a bit on a tangent here, but I know that people are saying, "Why did we buy Barnes? Why have we got two left wingers or left wing forwards? We could have bought a right winger." Newcastle could have bought a right winger, but they didn't want any right winger. They wanted the right winger that they wanted. And they wanted the best of the best that they could get and that is available at the time. So yes, they should have. And people forget we had Minte, and he's looking like he's going to be the best of the best. And I think Barnes became available. He's one of the best left wing forwards in the business, and that's what we got him. So anyway, I went off on a tangent. I'm going to go back. Noni Madueke. Now, I know that Newcastle didn't, as far as we know, did not officially bid for Noni Madueke. However, as if you guys remember the summer, Newcastle were heavily linked to Noni Madueke. He was on the Telegraph. He was on all major tier one media outlets that Newcastle, Chelsea are talking about Noni Madueke. Chelsea just couldn't make their mind up because obviously remember Chelsea bid for Michael Olise as well. Chelsea bid for Michael Olise also in January. And the belief and the thinking was that if Chelsea were able to get Michael Olise, then they would have sold Noni Madueke to Newcastle United. And that's what the heavy chatter was. So why Noni Madueke? For the very same reasons, or a very similar reasons to Michael Olise. If you look at his, and this is Chelsea 23-24 stats, and I've got 24-25 stats, but at the time of the summer, Chelsea 23 stats, Chelsea 24 stats, progressive carrying, 90 plus percentile, as well as, and this is going to be the interesting part, ball retention, again, in the 80-90 percentile, chance creation a lot smaller than Michael Olise, and I'll explain why I think that is. Goal efficiency, again, slightly smaller than Michael Olise, but I'm going to get into that as well. But progressive carrying between Michael Olise and Madueke seems to be the key theme here, and it becomes a very strong theme of what Newcastle are looking for. Now, chance creation is another big one, which they had in Michael Olise. But Noni Madueke, I think, is just selfish. He's a little bit more selfish. And Chelsea fans will tell you there's times where he can pass the ball to someone, he takes the shot takes the shot instead. And I think that's part of him being in a quite slightly dysfunctional team at the time at Chelsea. And it's still something that he needs to improve in this year. However, his ball retention in comparison to Michael Olise is, again, in the 80-90% percentile. And that's because I think the big thing is he plays for Chelsea and they play a different style, a more possession-based style in comparison to Crystal Palace, who were very much counter-pressing at the time. So Noni Madueke again shows, but if you see him, if you know about his dribbling abilities, one of the best 1v1 players, really good at taking the ball up the field, very dangerous. And we're going to find out how dangerous he is this Sunday. Hopefully not too much. But if someone has got a high ball retention, guys, I want you to remember is that they are able to have possession on the ball, they are able to complete a lot of touches on the ball, and they're able to dictate the tempo of the game. If anyone saw obviously from the news today what Newcastle are looking for in the Iron newspaper, they're looking for a right-wing forward who can also play an attacking mid. For you to be able to play in the busiest part of the field, in my opinion, that half space between defense and midfield, you have to be good on the ball. You have to have a very good technical ability, of which I think Noni Madueke has. So again, even though his chance creation, so creating an opportunity for other players, is relatively low, I think that's a personal choice from him rather than a technical flaw with him, because we know he has a really high technical flaw because his progressive carrying is very high, his ball retention is very high, and his goal efficiency. I also want to point his goal efficiency is very high. I also want you to point to you guys to goal threat. And if you guys will notice in 2023, 24, he was like in the 10-15 percentile, so very low. So goal threat being the ability to be in dangerous positions, your positioning, your shot creation, your finishing ability, your movement across the pitch. Now you'd think, why is that very low? The big thing about 2023, last year for Noni Madueke, you guys remember, Madueke only had 23 times that he played for Chelsea. 11 of those were starts, and in the other half, he was substituted a lot in those games as well. Not because of poor play, but just because they had a lot of players. So what he did in that time, in the very limited time he had, is that he learned to be very efficient in front of the goal. He didn't have as much time on the pitch. I think if he had more time on the pitch, he would have shown a lot more higher in the goal threat agreement, in the goal threat a percentile. How do we know that? Because in this season, where he has started nearly all Chelsea games, his goal threat has literally went 10 times over. He's in the 80, 90 percentile for goal threat. So now that adds to his, and this is why Eddie Howe, this is why Newcastle were looking at him, because they knew this would change. We had an open vacancy for a right wing forward position. It's very easy to sell to Noni and say, look, you can get all the game time. And if this had been Noni playing for Newcastle, his goal efficiency would have remained, his ball progressive carrying would have remained, because we know that he's got it in the locker, his goal threat would have increased. And I'm very confident that these other aspects of ball retention, which you know is incredible, would also maintain, as well as chance creation. So we know that Noni Madueke, Michael Olise have very, very similar traits in progressive carrying, technical ability on the ball, off the ball as well. I didn't show this as well, but both are, especially Noni Madueke, are very, very good in their defensive duties as well. They take that very, very seriously. These are the type of players that are right up Eddie Howe's street in terms of that. 22 years old, he would have been absolutely magnificent signing for us. So I want you to be able to remember this as we go forward and we're looking into other players, when other teams or other players have been suggested to us. And obviously we're going to talk about Mbuemo and others as well. Before I go forward into the other players, Davy Eddie, at this moment in time, Mbuemo, I did not realize Olise was up for grabs, quality player. He was up for grabs in the summer. Unfortunately, he no longer is. I wish he was, though. Jonathan Shaw, surely Paul Mitchell, Eddie Howe, and all others that surely Paul Mitchell, Eddie Howe, and all others that need to have been scouring the market. Mitchell has to show his worth, and he has a big reputation, and I'm hopeful he will come good. I believe he will too. Honestly, I believe that Paul Mitchell will come good too. So before we move on to the other players, for everybody that's coming in again, guys, let us know who you would want to choose for Newcastle's right wing forward positions. We talked about Michael Olise, we talked about Noni Madueke not as the players that are coming in, but as a reference point to, I think, the type of player, the type of right wing forward, right winger that Newcastle are looking for. To add as well, they're young, they're tall, athletic, pace, power, high technical ability. One of the elites in the game at the moment. High technical ability, goal creation, and goal efficiency as well. This is what Newcastle are looking for in terms of their players. Now, the other player they did bid for, Newcastle United, slightly less excited about, I'll be honest, was Anthony Elanga. And it was interesting again to hear on the Iron newspaper today that Newcastle are pretty much unlikely to go for Anthony Elanga, as well as Mark Gahey, again, especially in the next transfer window. Anthony Elanga obviously plays for Nottingham Forest and shares similar attributes to Michael Olise and Noni Madueke in terms of his ability to carry the ball and his goal threat, and a little bit on his also chance creation. Now, he's very much in the kind of 50, 60% off of progressive carrying. So average, really, goal threat and chance creation. Now, the argument could be for him. He plays for Nottingham, or at least last year, not this year. Last year, Nottingham Forest finished fourth from bottom, so they just about avoided relegation. We know they had an ultra defensive mindset. They were very much camped out in their half. So you're going to see all these other aspects very, very low. And you can see this year, when they're doing a lot better as a team, that his progressive carrying has been maintained. His ball retention has got better as well, but there hasn't been too much of an improvement for him. And that's why I hope it is true that Newcastle are not looking for him, because, and I'll use him as an example, and I don't think he's a player that Newcastle are looking for. Callum Hudson and Adoyi, who plays left wing for Nottingham Forest, both in 2023, 2024, as well as 24, 25, his progressive carrying, his ball retention, and his goal efficiency are all in the 90-95 percentile. So if Callum Hudson-Odoi is scoring so high in these metrics, why isn't then, my question is, what is Anthony Elanga's excuse? And without fully knowing what maybe his role in for Nottingham Forest is, that might be an eye opener. That might be the reason. There might be a reason for that. Maybe he's asked to do something a little bit more different. But that is a big question I'll be asking for. As it stands for me, his technical level, his progressive carrying, his goal creation in comparison to your Noni Maduekes, in comparison to your Michael Olise's, is very low. And I don't see Anthony Elanga at all, in my view. Yes, he is probably a step up, a half a step up, in my view, almost. I'll say a step up from Jacob Murphy and Almiron. But we've just talked about Michael Olise, Noni Madueke. It's a significant drop down. And the fact that we bid for him, I'm thinking that I'm really believing they have a lot of faith in Eddie Howe's qualities, but also what they think that if he plays for Newcastle United, the belief is that all those type of attributes, progressive carrying, goal creation especially, will shoot right up. I doubt that, and I hope that they do change their target from that, in my opinion. But maybe some of you guys think Anthony Elanga is a good player. What's the problem? Why, maybe some of you guys would still go for him. Let me know. Let me know what you think. But look, if your partner, if your opposition, the guy in the left and forward position is getting is in the upper 90 percentiles for all those other attributes that we're looking for, and you guys play for the same team, and you're not doing that, I've got to question your ability. So that's Anthony Elanga. That's Michael Olise, Noni Madueke. So yes, there are lots of attributes, but I think the common theme in all of these ones: progressive carrying, high technical ability, athletic, strong, and goal creation. So a creative, athletic, highly technical right winger, right wing forward is what Newcastle United are looking for, in my opinion, based on the players they bid for, but are also heavily linked to in the summer. So before we move on to the other players that we've got remaining, I want to be able to look at the comments as well. Davey Eddie, Philip, do you feel at this stage of the season, do you think we are mirroring Chelsea from last season? Just can't score, but loads of play. Especially at the moment we are, but I think Chelsea's problem is different to our problem. Chelsea have had an assortment of players, a lot of players, gifted, but a lot of players who did not know each other, and they had to learn on the spot. And so that's why, and they had another manager on top of that. So it's a very dysfunctional team. I think that attributed partly to, and those managers didn't always know who their best players were. I think, and I believe, that's what probably attributed to their lack of goal scoring. With Newcastle United, if I take Brighton's game, and we all know that we started the first 4 or 5 games winning but not performing well, apart from the Wolves game, and the next 3 or 4 games now performing well but not winning. All that's missing, Newcastle players who have been together since, some of them since the Championship, some of them since the takeover, been through Champions Leagues together, fighting relegation together. We have a close knit of players, and everything has grown as a team. So what I'm trying to say is that as a culture, as a team, we're different to Chelsea in that aspect, and that's why I have a belief that we're not going to stay like this. We're not going to be able to. The finishing touches is literally putting the ball in the back of the net, and I believe that so long as we marry our performances, continue our performances, i.e., defending well, ground duels. Keeping up our intensity and creating chances, supplying chances to our forward line, eventually we'll be able to finish. So I hope at the moment we are mirroring Chelsea a little bit. I don't think it'll be for too long. And I'm hoping as we play Chelsea this Sunday, that will also change. Davey Eddie, Jonathan, I agree. Mitchell really got to stamp his authority. We've got to have a really productive window. I agree. Anik Daz, I don't know if you've been here before, but if you have, I'm sorry if I missed you. If it's your first time, welcome. Great to have you on here, sir. Or yeah, I hope, sir. I like the studio so very well. Studio, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Ian McKenna, we did literally make a last ditch at 40 million, I believe, for Elanga. So we are definitely looking at and that's my worry, Ian. I really hope I hope it's a past tense. We were looking for him. I hope now that we've got Paul Mitchell was there when we did it. Remember, Paul Mitchell was a part of his reasoning was, look, I joined in July. There was already a transfer situation in progress. I let it run. So my hope is that he went for Elanga, but Elanga isn't his first choice either. And he's gone out to prove that, hey, there's better players available to us than Anthony Elanga. Maybe I'm being really, really biased because I kind of researched into him. I just don't see him as a player for Newcastle United. I really, really hope not. That is me. I really, really hope not. Ian. David Eddie, yes, probably correct on that, Philip. Great. Good. Jonathan Shaw, I keep waiting for us to finally click, but it just hasn't quite happened yet. I still thought no will come good, but the longer the shady form continues, the louder the vocal minority become. Yeah, and it depends on what you listen to. And I agree with you, Jonathan. There is a minority that are, it depends what you listen to. I have to be, for me personally, if I go on X, I know I'm going to see stuff. Or if I go on different places, you're always going to see stuff like. But it's talking to you guys. I get a really kind of good perception of things as well. So yeah, for Eddie, I think the next 4 games, as you guys would have seen from my post, are really important for Eddie. If hopefully we'll get to the next round of the League Cup, maybe we can get 7 points from the next tough games, and then everybody celebrate Eddie Howe saying what a genius he is. But if we get knocked out the League Cup and we only get 1 or 2 points, and we're heading to that international break, it's going to be a rough few weeks, I think, in my opinion. Right. So moving on to the rest of the players. So we've talked about Michael Olise. We've talked about Noni Madueke. We've talked about Anthony Elanga as a reference point to what we think Newcastle are looking for, which is highly technical players who can carry the ball, dribble, dictate play, who are very, very creative, exceptionally creative, can create goal-scoring opportunities for their teammates, as well as themselves being highly goal efficient. So taking opportunities of their goal-scoring opportunities, which is what we're missing at the moment at Newcastle United. Having those players, but also obviously young, athletic, and all those other things as well. So we've got a good kind of reference point for what Newcastle United are looking for. So, speaking of the man himself, Bryan Mbeumo. Bryan Mbeumo, the man, the myth, the legend, the man who has appeared today from courtesy of iNews from Mr. Mark Douglas himself, who, for those of you guys who come on here regularly will know, we read a lot. I've read a lot. We read a lot of his articles here to Newcastle United. I look at him very interesting. I'm going to kind of get into the background a little bit of this as well. From those who remember, Michael Douglas is the man who had an hour and a half, 90-minute interview with Paul Mitchell. Paul Mitchell has not spoken to directly, as far as we are aware, to any other journalist to this extent, to this significance, apart from Mark Douglas. So when Mark Douglas is talking and he says sources in Newcastle, in my view, in my opinion, it's either directly from Paul Mitchell or from people around him. And I think this news, which we're going to talk about, kind of to see where we are with Bryan Mbeumo, how serious we are. Is it a mirage? Is it a distraction? We'll find out. But this information now on Bryan Mbeumo, him been name-checked directly, I think comes directly from Paul Mitchell or somebody very, very close to Paul Mitchell himself. This is my opinion. This is my thought. I have never spoken to Mark Douglas before or anything like that. He hasn't whispered anything to me, but it is my opinion. This is my thought. But going back to why Bryan Mbeumo has obviously been mentioned, what are the good things about him? Now, and this is the part where I really have to add context to some of his statistics. Now, 24 season, he pretty much scores in a 70 80 percentile for like goal threat as well as chance creation. And then if you go back to his to some of his, he's very consistent in his goal, in kind of in his goals and his assists. And I think it's something like 10 to 15 GA, so goals and assists last year, and something similar-ish, just a little bit lower in the year previous. So he is very creative, and he's doing it for Brentford as well. So he's showing attributes that are very, very important to Newcastle United. And if you look at that in terms of especially around chance creation and goal threat, these are things that the Newcastle are looking heavily into. Although he scores very low in progressive carrying. I'm going to speak about why that could be and what the thing around that actually is. 24-25 season, this season, doing a lot better. And we know Brentford are doing quite well as well. Chance creation has maintained, but his goal efficiency is in the 100% arm. He's elite in terms of what he's doing in front of goal. He's a constant goal threat, which again, as people will know, we spoke about earlier, means that his movement, his positioning, what he's doing in the attacking third of the pitch, the final third of the pitch, is very, 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 very good. And not only that, so I'm going to get into that actually. But again, you guys will notice that his progressive carrying and his ball retention, but specifically his his progressive carrying is in the very, very low percentile. And we've just spoke about Noni Madueke, we just spoke about Olise, and to a less extent Elanga, but especially the first two, these guys are elite progressive. I forgot what I'm saying now. Progressive carrying. So does that mean that Mbuemo isn't elite at progressive carrying? No. And I'll explain why. I think he is elite. And if I can get his stats up, yes, let me share this with you guys and kind of go into it. And I think part of it is to do with, let me get back on the screen. So part of it is to do with playing for Brentford and Brentford's style of play. So and I got to research this a little bit more. So Brentford are transitional team, counter-attack team, very, very direct. So they don't waste too much time in terms of possession-based play. They don't waste too much time on kind of linking up play and doing those type of things. What you see often is, and what they're very, very, very good at, is, for instance, you have a Wisa. So Mbuemo plays very closely to Wisa. You'll have Wisa, for instance, dropping in, becoming a link-up player, and you see Mbuemo running the channels, getting ready to receive the ball. So one of the things that you'll see, and I'll show you on my screen, is that Mbuemo is in a 90 percentile for passes received in the final third. What that means in the final, he's the main outlet, the main creative force for Brentford in the final, in the dangerous part of the pitch for the opposition. So in front of goal in that final third. So his role is very, very different. His role isn't necessarily what, for instance, Michael Olise's role was playing for Palace, which is when they were counter-attacking, he's the person who has the duty of having to carry the ball from one end of the pitch to the other. That isn't, or like what Maxi was doing for us. And Mbuemo is the person who receives the ball. We say drops, the ball and links up the play, passing over the top or down the channels to Mbuemo, who would receive the play. So it's not that Mbuemo isn't good or hasn't the technical ability to carry the ball, to dribble. Those things are actually very, very high. It's the fact that Mbuemo has a very different role and different kind of aspects to what he has to do at Brentford, which actually leads me to another thing. Mbuemo for Brentford isn't, he plays on the right wing, but he isn't necessarily a right winger. For Brentford, Mbuemo is, in my view, if you these FB ref stats actually reveal it to me, because this is him versus other attackers and wingers. If you see him in the percentile here, guys, he only really scores very, very high for non-penalty goals. So as you guys can see, you would have seen earlier, he's very goal efficient. This is in comparison, his percentiles in comparison to attackers and wingers. So in comparison to Madueke's, in comparison to Olise's. So when it comes to progressive carries, is very low compared to those guys. But this is because he doesn't play as a winger or as an attacking midfielder for Brentford. What he plays as is what FB Ref reveals to us. This is versus other forwards. He plays for Brentford. His position for Brentford is a forward. His main job is to create goals, is to score goals for his teammates. His manager, Thomas Frank, doesn't want Mbuemo to be doing an Olise type of role where he's picking up the ball from their part of from their half of the field and carrying it to the other part of the field. Mbuemo's role is to, when they get the ball, whether it's Olise who drops deep or Van Aanholt, for instance, picks up the ball, and Mbuemo dashes down the right wing or through the center, and he becomes the outlet that they launch that ball to, whether down the channels or over the top. And that's why you'll find him in the upper percentiles, 90 percentiles for ball received in the final third. And very, very interestingly, progressive carries here on FB Ref. I'm sure you guys can see it here. He's in the 96 percentile versus other forwards. So Mbuemo has the technical ability, and this is what Newcastle are looking at, has a technical ability to carry the ball, to dribble, to dictate play, if that's what he was asked to be able to do. And as a forward, he's doing that for Brentford. Obviously, blocks are very high, which shows that his defensive duties are good. In the 90 percentile for passes attempted, 90 percentile for shot creating actions. So he's a big creator. 90 percentile for progressive passes. We're talking about creativity for Newcastle United. We've got a man that can do that. It also showed us in the newspaper that Newcastle are looking for someone that can play in an attacking midfield role as well as the right wing role, with which Mbuemo suits. Highly creative player. Highly creative player. His assistance, his expected assists, 87% are successful take-ons. So him taking on other players, 1v1 situations, again, very, very high. Where is he? 85% are. Assists, 80% are. So he is very much so, for especially when it comes to Brentford. Mr. Mbuemo isn't necessarily a right winger. Yes, he is a right winger, but his role is as a forward. And what he does, where you find him really excelling, is in goal creation, goal efficiency, in those type of stats. But is he capable in progressive carrying? Yes, he is elite at progressive carrying. Is he a goal threat? Is he a good dribbler? Excuse me. He is an exceptional dribbler. Yes, but maybe not to the level of a Madueke or an Olise, but yes, this is something that he can do and that he can be very, very, very good at for Newcastle United. So let me bring this back up again. So kind of explain, this kind of adds context to Mbuemo himself, because I won't lie to you guys, when I was researching this and I initially saw these stats where he was really, really low for progressive carrying in this season and as well as before, I was saying to myself, I've watched Mbuemo play. I know he can take on the ball. Why is he so low? And I think the main thing is, playing for Brentford, he has a very different role. He is a forward. He is not necessarily an out-and-out winger. He's not a run down the channels with the ball in, even though his crosses are very high as well. He is very much a forward who can create, who can score. He's very, very, very efficient in front of goal. And you can see why Newcastle are looking for him. And you can see why Newcastle are looking at him. And obviously, he has been described as a dream in the I newspaper. And I'm gonna just speak a little bit about him and just see, how real is this story? What is this? Um, the first thing that I was asking myself when I saw this, guys, and before I get into this. So yes, Mbuemo ticks all the boxes before I get into it. Progressive carrying, goal threat, goal efficiency. He's athletic, high technical level. He scores goals. He would be absolutely incredible for Newcastle United. And I think he's got the right profile, especially with him in balls received in the final third, that you can knock the ball out to him. You can see Bruno Tonali getting the ball out to him early. He knows what to do with the ball in that final third as well. You can see he can make the right decisions, the right passes to an Isak, to a Gordon, to anybody else. And for himself, if he needs to take on a defender, if he needs to dribble past someone, he can do it. And he's very much so. 8, 9 times out of 10, this guy's going to create chances. He's going to create shot creation, create actions. He's going to be there. He's going to be efficient in front of goal. So he is a very, very, very good. He'll be an exceptional addition to Newcastle United. And I can see why he was described by sources at Newcastle on the I newspaper as a dream signing. But is this a mirage? Is this real? Is this something that is likely to happen? And before we get into that, I'm going to go through our comments to see what you guys are saying. And my coffee, I think, has gone cold as well. Harry Austin, afternoon. Toon Tactics, afternoon to you, sir. Great to see you. Let me know who you think Newcastle should go for in the right for that right wing position. Let me know what you think of Mbuemo. Dave Eddie, I'm sure we all like Eddie, but is he on the edge of the sack if we lose the next 3 games? I feel he will be. I just hope we can pull together and get results. Yeah, and I think you've summarized it well there, Davey, to be honest. I think, me personally, Davey, I don't know what Eddie Howe's ceiling is as a manager. I think he's a good manager, possibly very good manager. Is he an elite manager or head coach, shall we say? And part of that would be, I think, obviously, a lot of that would be results on the pitch, but also how he plays well with others. And that being Paul Mitchell, I think will play a lot into it. But I agree. The next 4 games and what happens is very, very important. He's shown that he can take us to the Champions League. He's also shown us that he can sometimes lose games that we shouldn't. These don't happen too often as well. So essentially for me, this season is going to show to me who is Eddie Howe. However, Eddie Howe doesn't have a whole season. He might have the next 4 games. We don't know, especially if God forbid, the worst scenario does happen. We get knocked out the League Cup and we got very, very low points for the next 4 games. I know we're playing Chelsea. I know we're playing Arsenal. I know we're playing Nottingham Forest away. I know these things. But if you want to be an elite manager, you can't be you playing. We're going to learn less about you playing relegation teams than we are how you play against other higher teams as well. But one note of hope and encouragement. So far, against the top 6, I think we've got about 4 points. So we've played Tottenham, we've played Man City, we've got 4 points so far. So we've been doing very well. So tougher teams than Chelsea, in my opinion. So, but great question, Davey. Davey Eddie, Mbuemo, excellent consistency, and obviously goals and assists are very good. Defending is quality as well. He's a very, very good addition to Newcastle United. I highly agree with that. Bino Dash, Toon Tactics TV explained the tactics in brilliant way. Thank you, Bino. I appreciate you, sir. And guys, if you got an X account or a channel or anything like that, graphics and stuff like that you want design to a high quality and all these type of things, I'm gonna do a shameless plug for Bino Dash. Bino, leave your details in the chat. I'm gonna put your details in the description as well. Guys, holler at this guy. He is absolutely incredible. Jonathan Shaw, the thing is, any of the players you put up would be an improvement. I question whether Anthony Elanga would be, but he would be to a half step. Yeah. Paul Mitchell has all the stats and info on who's out there. Correct, exactly. And I'm happy for him to surprise me with whoever he's scouting. I am looking forward to this. I am looking forward to see who the main man is. Great comment there. David Eddie, that's good info about Mbuemo. You just thought he was a direct winger. Good to know. I did. I learned a lot. Davey. I learned a lot about Mbuemo. David Eddie, I just thought he. Oh, sorry. He said you talking about yourself. Okay, you talking about yourself. Sorry, yeah. I just thought he was a winger. Not you thought he. No. Oh, I just thought he was a winger. Not that. Yeah. You're talking about yourself. Not that you thought. Yes. Yeah. You explained that thoroughly. Thank you, Davey. I appreciate you. Now, we've talked about his attributes, which are very, very good and would work for Newcastle. Creative, athletic, great technical ability, high, elite technical ability, elite goal efficiency. He is there. Like, he's incredibly, very, very good. My thing is, and you guys let me know. So look, we were all talking about him in this extent because he came, for folks that didn't know, he came up on a tier one journal in media aspect on the newspaper from our man Mark Douglas, the man who had an hour and a half, 90-minute interview with Paul Mitchell himself, and has since been releasing articles about players and everything else. And it is my belief, my opinion, my view that when Mark Douglas is talking about sources in Newcastle United, he's either directly talking about Paul Mitchell or he's talking about people that are close to Paul Mitchell himself. So this gives me a kind of, so this kind of goes into the who, why, what, and like, why do we know this? Why do we know what Newcastle's dream signing, dream being the quoted thing that they said would be for Newcastle United? That's my thing when I'm talking about this, guys. Like, so, and this is directly from the article itself. So, but Mitchell is still intent on making changes at the club's recruitment practices and objectives. So, as I reported, our newspaper reported earlier this week, a right winger is now considered the priority in the next transfer window. And before I get to that part, it's interesting how we shifted from that because, again, from the I newspaper, Joshua Achipong, defender from Chelsea, was also named, was profiled in the I newspaper itself. Subsequently, now he doesn't want to sign a contract at Chelsea, which runs out next year, I think, next June. Correct me, guys, if I'm wrong. Go on transfer.com, correct me if I'm wrong. Either next June or the June afterwards. I think it's next June. Newcastle have really shifted their eyes onto this right winger position. I believe that. But I don't think they've fully left the defender position. In my opinion, I don't necessarily think they're going to buy, if they do buy a centre-back, a right centre-back, it's not necessarily going to be a star. I think they're looking for a youth player, someone like Joshua Achipong or in that profile. This is my opinion. So I think they're kind of cooling interest, but it could also be a tactic. We'll go into it. So a right winger is now considered the priority in the next transfer window. And Brentford's Bryan Mbeumo is the dream target. So my view is, if it's Paul Mitchell or people next to him, why have you revealed this to the public? That is seen as then it goes on to say, that, being Bryan Mbeumo, is seen as unlikely to happen in January, though. As is any renewed interest in Nottingham Forest Anthony Elanga, which I'm very grateful for, or Mark Gahey prime summer targets. And what that always interesting. If he said Anthony and Mark Gahey, does that mean they could still go for either? But I read it as interest has cooled in Anthony Elanga, interest has cooled in Mark Gahey. It is that right wing position that they really, really want. So my question to you guys, and maybe you can help me with this: why name Bryan Mbeumo and then say, but it's not likely to happen in January? Why name Bryan Mbeumo at all? Why let rivals know, Premier League clubs? Why let people know, the public know that, hey, everybody, Newcastle United, we are interested in Bryan Mbeumo. We're interested in Bryan Mbeumo. Well, we really want Bryan Mbeumo. Why did Paul Mitchell, in my opinion, Paul Mitchell, communicate this over our newspaper. And it's not the first time. Joshua Achepong obviously is another person. The article goes on to say a lot further down towards the end. Instead, the club hope to be able to profit from others who are in PSR difficulty this summer. So instead of spending what they're saying, instead of spending major money in the transfer window for a Bryan Mbeumo type of player, they're going to target other clubs who are likely to have PSR problems. Something that would indicate a more long-term view is being taken. So instead, the club hope to be able to profit from others who are in PSR difficulty. This summer, something that would indicate a more long-term view is being taken. So instead of a club like Newcastle, who last year in January were in PSR difficulty, they're going to target those type of clubs and see if they can get players from there. Why? Especially in January, because it's more likely that they're able to get a cheaper prices for those players. So I'm baffled. Well, I was confused, and I'm thinking, and you guys, I need your comments. I need you guys to help me out with this. Why would Paul Mitchell, why is Bryan Mbeumo name being mentioned as the dream target, the number one target? They're saying there is nobody else like a Bryan Mbeumo. And we can see why. We've read his statistics, we've read his attributes, his talents, his skills, what he can do. And we can see that he can do that for Newcastle. We know he can do it in the Premier League. He's a certified Premier League player, certified, and in certain aspects is elite. So, but why have they named him? And also said, but we can't get him in January though. We can't get him in January though. At the same time, also communicated to us that we're not going to go for Anthony Elanga, or it's very unlikely we're going to go for Anthony Elanga, because obviously I don't think he's good enough. But it's also unlikely that we're going to go for Mark Gahey. That remains outstanding for me, but it could be a thing. But before I get into it, I'm going to read your comments, guys, because I've got some theories and ideas of my own, but I want to know yours. I want to know your theories and ideas before I speak about my own. Davey, I hate to say this, Philip, but I think Mitchell will want his own coaching. Yeah. So Mitchell gets the players and the new coach just coaches them. You know what? It makes a lot of sense. And to be fair, Davey, when he went to Monaco, that's the first thing that happened. One of the, in terms of significant decisions, was the head coach left or was sacked. It makes it, if he has that in his mind to do, I don't know what's in his heart or his mind. If he has that in his mind for Eddie Howe, he would have. It won't be easy for him to get rid of Eddie Howe, like he did the Monaco coach, because Eddie Howe's done exceptionally well at Newcastle United, and it might be a thing where Paul Mitchell is waiting to see if results do turn for the worse. And remember, guys, I don't know if you guys have noticed, Terzic, the former Dortmund coach, was in London the other day. And I'm not clear what club he was talking to. Man United say it wasn't them. West Ham think it could be for them. Crystal Palace is also on the teetering. Could it be for Newcastle United? I don't know. But the one thing that Paul Mitchell can't deny, and he hasn't denied, is that Eddie Howe, he might not necessarily like everything about Eddie Howe in terms of maybe the profile, maybe the not profile of players, but his kind of attitude to the transfer window. But he can't deny that Eddie Howe, in my opinion as well, is an elite coach. The way he can develop players, young and seasoned professionals. So just because Paul Mitchell might get his type of guy in, it doesn't necessarily mean that guy can maybe get the best out of the players at Newcastle United. So Paul Mitchell will be taking the risk himself if he says, "I'm getting rid of Eddie Howe and I'm bringing my guy in." But what if your guy, Paul Mitchell, doesn't work out? And that's where it gets even worse for him. So I think him and Eddie Howe are finding a ground to work together. But I see what you're saying, Davey. This is going to be an ongoing saga, and we're going to see how it plays out the closer we get to the transfer window, I think. And this international break is going to be key. Like I said, if Newcastle only get 1 or 2 points for these next 4 games, and they get knocked out of the League Cup, is quite dangerous for Eddie Howe, in my opinion, or quite at least risky. Jonathan Shaw, it's all just media talk until we see something concrete. Try to get likes. Yeah, it could be. Everybody knows we need the right winger. It's not a secret. We've needed one for 2 years. I agree with you, Jonathan, but I don't know why they named the right winger. Well, I have my suspicions. I have my theories. Davey, yeah, it's strange. Yes, a strange one, Philip. It will definitely unsettle Mbuemo. It will definitely unsettle Mbuemo, who will no doubt know about it now. I wouldn't be happy if I was Brentford manager. We need to keep Eddie. Sorry, Jonathan Shaw. We need to keep Eddie. I'm not buying into the conspiracy theory. Paul Mitchell isn't daft, and unless the team sinks like a stone, Eddie would be safe. He hasn't been supported. Good, interesting take there. Interesting take there. Thank you, guys. So, Paul Mitchell. I'm gonna go into my theory. So, look, what's the why disclose a target? Why tell people that you're going for Mbuemo? We talked about it. So he's kind of set, there could be setting expectations. He's letting us know, he's letting all of us know, hey, we're looking for the best of the best in terms of right wingers. In my opinion, Newcastle's hierarchy, Newcastle's owners do keep tabs on what's happening on social media. They become a lot more active on social media. You'd have seen the day in the life of Gordon and everybody else. They become a lot more active. They can see what we're doing. They can see what we're thinking in terms of players. And there's been a lot of talk on why did we buy Barnes when we could have bought a right winger? Why haven't we got a right winger yet? Why? And I think them saying, hey, Bryan Mbeumo is our dream, is letting people know we're not just looking for any. You're not going to find Bryan Mbeumo's fall off the trees. There's not too many of those guys around. Not with that kind of skill level, but also background, Premier League certified. There's another thing that's very interesting about. So leveraging the media. So he's using the media as well to kind of grab attention and influence in negotiations. Maybe there's tacit negotiations already beginning to happen, and now expectations are rising. A distraction tactics. Is Bryan Mbeumo is it? What would you call it? It's not a mirror. Is it a mirror? Smoke screen. Is he a smoke screen for somebody else? Is it a bit of a distraction? Hey, everybody, Bryan Mbeumo, but they're really talking to somebody else. That could be. Or there is actually genuine interest. There is actually genuine interest. But if there is genuine interest, what would be, in my opinion, what would be the advantage of letting people know? Again, kind of revealing a transfer, letting people know, getting people engaged. Maybe Newcastle aren't sure whether we as fans would back the signing, and sometimes just saying to folks, "Hey, we're looking at Bryan Mbeumo," and maybe they really really like Bryan Mbeumo. Maybe there are a little bit more talks and the same, but hey, we can close this deal. But what's the fans going to say about it? What do they feel about that? And they just want to see what we think. If you're asking me, guys, if Paul Mitchell you're watching, yes, Bryan Mbeumo, very good, go for him. That's my opinion. But what do you guys think? But at the same time, I would think hopefully I was going to say I'll hope that they're a bit more secure in themselves and believing in themselves. Our owners and everybody are more secure in themselves in the players that they recruit. That regardless of what we might think, they know. They believe in the profile of player they're going for. That would be my opinion. Leverage of the selling club. So by openly expressing interest in a club, a club can sometimes apply pressure to the selling club, lower the asking price, and expedite negotiations. So as it was said in the chat, it was said in the comment, hey, Bryan Mbeumo, his representative, his people, his agents, his agencies now know, hey, that Iron newspaper, the same Iron newspaper, the article written by Mark Douglas, the same journalist who had a 90-minute interview with Paul Mitchell, that same guy is writing in that same newspaper that Newcastle are interested in Bryan Mbeumo. there is a high likelihood, 95, 100% likelihood that it's Paul Mitchell or people around him, Newcastle United are interested. There is genuine interest in Bryan Mbeumo. And if that is the case, and Bryan Mbeumo has already said that he would like to play, a high, and a bigger club competing for bigger things. And Brentford aren't strangers to this thing. They know these things. They've had players come and go. It heaps that kind of pressure. Now they know now that Bryan, his agents, who probably will start talking to a few intermediaries from Newcastle, trying to not breach too many transfer recruitment rules and stuff like that, can now really begin discussions in earnest. And then maybe if they can then say, hey, are you guys sincere about this? Because if you are sincere about this, we'll go back to Brentford, we'll go back to the manager, we'll go back to the owners and apply pressure. But we need to know, we the agents of Bryan Mbeumo need to know that you, Newcastle United, that Mbuemo is your top target, and you're not just burning hot air. Because if he's not your top target, if Bryan Mbeumo is not your top target and you've put his name out in a newspaper like that, you're taking the absolute liberties. Because we can't be going to Brentford, pressing them to let Bryan go, and you're actually looking for somebody else. So there is a risk factor to it. Player recruitment, letting people know, strategic posturing. It can be strategic posturing to divert attention from a potential targets. So so they could still be looking at other targets as well. So there is an advantage there for Paul Mitchell to publicly. I think the disadvantage, though, if you're genuinely interested, is that all of a sudden he lets not only Bryan Mbeumo and his agents know, but he also lets know other rivals. And I think that could then put Brentford in a position where they could begin to demand higher price tag. The player himself can demand for higher wages. There is a disadvantage to these things. So there is a risk factor in all of these things that Paul Mitchell is doing. The interesting fact, I don't know if you guys are aware, is that Bryan Mbeumo, by this January, Bryan Mbeumo, so he's got 2 years left on his contract. By this January, it would be 18 months left. So in a very similar situation to Mark Gahey, if Bryan Mbeumo doesn't, but Brentford do have an option to extend by a year. But if and this is we're gonna catch that part. If by this summer transfer window, he'll have 1 year left. With Brentford have an option to extend his contract by a year. However, and this might be why Paul Mitchell is letting it known publicly and he's taking that risk. Brentford hold a strategic advantage in terms so far, in that they can extend. They have the option of extending Mbuemo's contract by another year. Not Mbuemo, but they do. And so the way to counteract that, I think Paul Mitchell or people around him have let it publicly known with all the risks that this has, and we've talked about the risks, have let it be publicly known that, hey, we're interested in Bryan Mbeumo. He's our dream target. By letting Mbuemo and his representatives know, and if Mbuemo reciprocates that, he can go back to Brentford and say, look, I know you guys can extend my contract, but I want to leave. I want to move to Newcastle United. There's no point in Brentford extending it by 1 year if you've got an unhappy player or you've got a player who wants to move. So that would be, and so by Paul Mitchell letting people know publicly, letting Bryan Mbuemo himself and his representatives know that, hey, Newcastle United are interested in you. You're our dream target. You are our dream target. He's already through the media quoting the player. It'll be interesting to see how Bryan and his representatives respond. It might come from the media or it might go silent. If it goes silent, it'll be very, very. I think there'll be discussions going on between the clubs and Mbuemo and others. So I've talked myself into it. I think there is genuine interest in Bryan Mbeumo. At the same time, for this article talking about PSN, all these other things, they're also saying like, look, it's a difficult deal to get done, and it is a difficult thing. The cards are still firmly in Brentford's hands, and they have to see what Mbuemo says. And there'll be other clubs who have shown interest in, like Liverpool and other, especially Liverpool, I think it was, who have shown interest. You know, they're going to be looking for a replacement for Salah as well, and Bryan Mbeumo will be on the list as well. How high up on that list, when you got Kvaratskhelia and others available, will be interesting to see. But Newcastle have let it be known, and it is my belief that their genuine is interest in him. And so Brentford have a choice. He's currently valued as 40 million on transferwindow.com. He's on a 45 grand a week. By this January, he'll have 18 months left. And yes, Brentford have a year extension. But if Mbuemo is interested in going, maybe, it's a slim chance, maybe 5-10% that, and maybe a deal in January can be done. But they're letting them know now. Maybe the discussions can happen now, and Brentford can start thinking if the players really wants to go, especially Brentford can now begin to plan for who the replacement for him would be. And that would be very interesting to see. But it's all talk at the moment. It is all talk. So that's my opinion. I think there is a genuine interest. And it makes sense compared to other players. If you compare him to Noni Madueke, Michael Olise, a lot of the same similar profiles, a lot of the same similar characteristics and skill level or technical ability as well. So I'm going to go to the top comments before I go to the other players. There's a few other players I wanted to share with you guys before we conclude this show. So, Davey Eddie, I'm a big Eddie Howe fan. Really hope everything turns out well. So do I. Jonathan Shaw is just throwing people off the scent whilst they quietly go about their plan, and that's the other side of it. Because, like I said, the Mbuemo deal is very hard to do. And there could be somebody else that they're looking at as well. And I'm going to share some of those players with you, Jonathan. If you're around to see it, let me know your thoughts. And if anybody's coming in late, let me know what you guys think. Who would be your right wing signing for Newcastle United? Davey Eddie. Philip, yes, it could be a smoke screen. How many times do new signings come out of left field and us fans didn't have a clue? Exactly. Jonathan Shaw. Surely, if Mitchell said that, then he's in breach of something. You're not supposed to talk about other club players, but they do. And if you're saying the media, because remember, journalists don't reveal their sources, so they always say sources at the club, sources here. So if the FA wanted an investigation, they have to know who said it at Newcastle United. You know, it could be the dinner lady for all they know. So, but if Mark Douglas, because I think they've also got a privilege, kind of a source privilege, so they can't reveal who their sources. They don't have to reveal who their sources are as well. So he might, if he is in breach, which I don't think he is, but if Paul Mitchell was in breach, how would the FA be able to find out? And look, the reason why we know about transfer windows and transfer business, all this stuff so much, is because clubs are doing it all the time. And sometimes they're communicating through some of their tier one and kind of, they all have their kind of journalists that they go to kind of to communicate to fans, to the public and others. But there's different reasons as well. He's also he might also be communicating to us, Jonathan. It's a public thing. It's communicating to us as fans to let people know that look at the caliber of right wing forwards that we're looking at. We're not just looking at any right wing forwards. Like I said, skilled players with exceptional pedigree, history, are very in character and attitude and all these other things are very, very hard to find. And that's why, in my opinion, Newcastle haven't quite got the right winger that they wanted yet, because the one that they want hasn't appeared. And that is my opinion. So, going on to other players that are available that I have researched. So, I have gone on to scoutstats.com I'll share that in the link as well. And I've looked for these key attributes that we've talked about: progressive carrying, chance creation, um, um, obviously the goal efficiency, ball retention, these type of things, these type of aspects. I've also looked at the profile, their athleticism, their height, their age, and stuff like that. And I've gone on to about 3 players who I think, but also availability. Availability has been a key one because, like I said, there is hundreds of players. But yeah, if we're looking at this transfer window, this particular January transfer window, we're going to look for availability. Which players are about to run out of their contract and their fees are low, which means their fees are low. These are the type of players that I think Newcastle are going to be looked for. And look, it said it in the article, they're going to be looking for players as well at clubs who have PSR issues and PSR problems as well. So speaking of PSR problems, currently playing at Sporting Lisbon, but is his current parent club is Barcelona, who can't register the players at the moment. Francisco Trincao. Now, this again, I have to say thank you to Kev Lawson from X, who directed me to him. Excellent Portuguese player, plays on the ring, technical ability, dribbling ability to play through the lines, has a similar profile to a Riyad Mahrez, more closely, in my opinion, to a Cole Palmer and a Kulusevski. He has height, he's very tall. He plays on the right, has a left foot, technical ability, is able to create, has excellent ball retention, really, really, really good. So if you see it here, his stats here, I know he's playing in the Portuguese league. They're about 5th or 6th league, best league in the world. 90% goal efficiency, 95% chance creation, 90% ball retention. He can dictate play. Ball carrying is a little bit lower, but that gets better in this year. Goal threat. He is a very, very good player with a very good technical ability. And obviously, 24-25 season, his progressive carrying has also gone through the roof. So he's already, I think, this season has scored 3 goals with 5 assists for Sporting Lisbon. So he's a very good player. Now, you might say his current market value is 16 million euros. So a couple of things. You might ask me, why is he only 16 million if he's worth that much? Well, the main reason for that is that he's got about a year left in his contract. He's got a year left in his contract, and he's currently at loan to Sporting Lisbon. And there's already been talk that Bayern Leverkusen are looking to purchase him for 50 million euros as well. And so by this January, he's in the position where, is it a year left? I want to make sure because I've got the other contracts up as well. Has he got a year left? No, 2026. Okay, so he's got 2. He'll have 18 months left, but he's in a position where Barcelona don't want to keep him. He's ready to go. They want to sell him, and Bayern Leverkusen are interested in him. So he is very proficient. You might then say, but is he an Eddie Howe signing? He's played in the Premier League for Wolves, if anybody can remember, a couple years ago. He was there for about a year. Wolves had an option to buy, but they chose not to. I don't know why, whether it's a financial problems on their half or was he not good enough? I don't know. But what do you guys think about him? He seems to have a really good high skill and technical level. He has a good kind of athletic side to him as well. Tall, strong as well. I got to see him play yesterday. He was okay. Didn't get too much of the ball. But he's definitely someone that can dictate play. He can definitely play through the middle. And I'll be honest with you guys, before the news today about Bryan Mbeumo, he would be right on my list, to be honest with you guys. And I think maybe that's someone that Paul Mitchell and Eddie Howe might look at as well, in my opinion. But let me know what you guys think. That's Francisco. Johan Bokayo. You would have also heard of Johan Bokayo. Got to see him yesterday as well. He's always been linked to other teams. And that's partly because, as you guys can see, he is also exceptional ball carrier, ball retention, chance creation, goal efficiency. So he creates goals. He is a very dangerous threat as well. He's very, very efficient. I got to see him yesterday. Yes, he's good at carrying the ball and dribbling, all these other things, but he's very efficient with the ball. He doesn't waste time. He doesn't really he doesn't dribble for the sake of dribbling. He doesn't he seems to make the right decision all the time. He has also very good defensive attributes as well. So he did a good job when they played against PSG yesterday in terms of defending as well. So, but he's currently valued at 50 million euros, and his contract also runs out in 2026. So this January, he will have 18 months left. So he's at that period where, hey, PSV got to think about whether they sell him or not. The only kind of disadvantage to him is that he plays in the Eredivisie. And I know that him and Minte played in the same team in the same league together. And look how Minte turned out. But the Eredivisie is a league that has really, really dropped in quality. So if you're a Paul Mitchell and Eddie Howe looking at this, what you'll be thinking to yourself is, but how good is he? And how much of this is transferable to the Premier League? And that's where maybe some doubts might creep in. And at the moment, it's still worth a lot of money. And unless he's pushing for a move, he may not be the prime target that they're looking for. So that's Johan Bokayo, guys. So that's Francisco, who's going to be around 15, 20 million in January, in my opinion. And Johan Bokayo, who probably would cost between 40 to 50 million euros as well. Both really good technical players, but himself as well. The drawback of Bokayo, he has no Premier League experience, and he plays in one of the kind of lowest quality leagues in football at the moment, especially in Europe. So that's Johan Bokayo, but he has Champions League experience. And what Paul Mitchell and Eddie Howe, I'm sure if they're looking at him, will be looking at how he plays in those tournaments to be able to really kind of gauge his technical level as well. So they'll know more about that as well. But what do you guys think so far of these guys? Do let me know. I've got, I think, one more player that I want to look at. He's a bit of a wild card, but Maghnas Ackliouche. Maghnas Ackliouche. Now, the reason why I've mentioned Magnus is that there was a report recently from Graham Bailey. From those of you that are aware, he's one of the top journalists around especially around transfers. He said that Maghnas Ackliouche is someone that Paul Mitchell himself is very, very interested in. And I'm going to talk about him and maybe why Newcastle may go for him as well. So, but first, a little bit about the player himself. Magnus, so he's been described as someone who's is essentially like a locksmith in the hole. He plays for AS Roma. He's a very good, he's like a number 10, hybrid 10, second striker type of player. He's able, when you're playing against low blocks, he's the guy that can unlock those defenses with his passing and with his dribbling. He's able to break down teams and create chances as well as for himself as well. So he's highly sought after. So this is some of his stats from 2023 and 2024. And again, we can see the attributes that we're looking for. Goal threat, goal efficiency, very similar to your Bryan Mbeumo, very, very good in front of goal. Chance creation. Now, you have to remember, he's 22 years old as well. This season, a little bit way less on the goal threat side of things, but progressive carrying has risen, ball retention has risen, chance creation. He is a little bit of a late bloomer in terms of his development, but he has really kind of come to prominence from his time of playing with the France under-21 squad. Again, I got to see him play yesterday. He actually scored as well. And he's someone that's very good at you can see why he's a goal threat. He's very good. His movement off the ball is very, very good. He's always a really good outlet. His passing is pretty good as well. I wonder if his progressive carry, why it's so low, similar to Bryan Mbeumo, where Monaco really use him as an outlet, where he's the one that receives the ball rather than the person that kind of takes the ball from A to B. One of the things that lets me know that is, or takes the ball from his own half and takes it to the other half. One of the things that lets me know that is because AS Monaco's average possession stats is around 58, 59%. So they're a team. They are a team who are used to having the ball. So what that lets me know is that most of the times, and they're currently second in the in League 1. Again, about the third or fourth best league in Europe. And so, kind of similar to a Man City type of situation, he doesn't necessarily have to carry the ball from A to B because most of the time his team have the ball themselves. And so what I think is likely for him is that his main thing is movement and being in a position where they can break down low blocks. I think a lot of teams take up the low block against his team. And so it's all about his movement and what he does off the ball. And I want to be able to show something where he shows very similar stats to Mbuemo. Let me get this on my screen. So he's 22 years old, plays for France. Excuse me, guys. Excuse me. In Europe as well. Let me get this off. Let me show what I mean. So he's got very similar stats to Mbuemo. Stop the screen, share this, share screen. FB ref. So these are his FB ref. Now, when you compare him to attacking midfielders and midfielders, his main attribute, and again, this is why I'm saying that I don't think he's a winger. He's not played, even though you will see on the thing, on a lot of profiles, he's seen as a right winger, or his position is right wing. But if you compare him to attacking midfielders and wingers, his main attributes are in the high percentages are tackles and progressive passes, which is really, really good. But it also lets me know that he doesn't necessarily play in that particular role. Passes attempted, stuff like that. But where he gets high is when you compare him to midfielders. And this comes down to, I think, what his role in his position for Monaco is. So he often drops deep and collects the ball from either the forwards or from the midfield, either carries up a little bit or makes the passes. Typically, he likes to get rid of the ball a lot and pass it on. So that's why you can see here his progressive passes, or he himself, his off the ball movement as well. So he likes to be in the final third. So you can see. So let me see. Where's his progressive passes? Oh yeah, so his progressive passes, exactly. 19 is right at the top. Is in the progressive passes received. So where's the progressive passes? Progressive passes 67%. That's interesting. I thought it'd be a little bit higher. So maybe that is something that he needs to work on. But progressive passes received. So he's always in a very dangerous part of the pitch. And 99% percentile. So he's very important to Monaco in when they get up the pitch and when they want to be dangerous. Touches, again, on the ball constantly, 98 percentile. I forgot what the MPXG and AG are, but for the stuff that I do know, shot creating actions, 97 percentile. Again, creative player. Progressive carries compared to other midfielders, 97 percentile. Successful take-ons, 94 percentile. Assistant goals, 94 percentile. Shots total, 93 percentile. Assists, 90 percentile. So he strikes me as like a hybrid 8 almost. But when I saw him play yesterday in Europe, I know it was a lower level of opposition. He was very good at kind of dropping in, either picking up the ball and carrying it or passing it off, or especially when Monaco are attacking, he was off the ball movements where he's really trying to get into the half spaces between the defense and the opposition defense and their attack. And he was really, really good at that. So why Ackliouche? He has the traits that Newcastle are looking for, technical traits in dribbling, take-ons, and others. Now, if you read his scouting reports, there is an issue around his ability to secure the ball. So he seems to be in there. There's the way he moves. He's not very good at keeping the ball or being very press resistant. And his playing style is very much so take the ball and move it, take the ball and move it, and movement as well. So he's not a Bruno Gomes. Don't ask him to be a Bruno Gomes and collect the ball from the defense and, bypass one or two players. You're asking him to very much kind of be in a situation where he can give and go with players, where he can also move off the ball, be in dangerous positions where he can make dangerous passes. So he's a different type of player to the ones that we've mentioned, to your Noni Madueke, to your Michael Olise, to your Mbuemos. He's probably more similar to Mbuemo, but there's a lot of good attributes to him. Now, obviously, Monaco, where he's playing, is the former club of where Paul Mitchell himself was at. So maybe there's that connection. It might be a lazy connection that's been made by the journalists. We don't know, but it's certainly a very interesting one. And I think when I was looking for players that Newcastle might look for, when you look at progressive carries, all the stuff that we mentioned, he comes up very, very, very high in all of these aspects and in all of these things. And so, what do you guys think of him? He was linked to Paul Mitchell. He was linked to Newcastle United by the news as well. He seems to have a lot of talent. He's relatively young, but is still considered a late bloomer. He's only really come to prominence now. But he's played in Europe. He's athletic. He's got good technical ability about him. How good in terms of ball retention is questionable. But he's been playing at a high level for a team that's either always in the Champions League or trying to win. Is contending for the number one spot in league on themselves, competing with PSG often. The other interesting thing about him, I had his contract. I think his contract, here we go. His contract is until 2028. He's currently valued at 30 million euros. And I think that's part of the attraction about him. I think he's the type of player that Paul Mitchell is always looking for. He's an academy graduate from Monaco. So there might be a thing where, I don't know what their financial situation is. I'm sure it's pretty good after Paul Mitchell left them. But he knows the owners, Paul Mitchell. He knows the club. He knows how to talk to them. And I think that we were talking earlier on Mbuemo and how maybe this could be a distraction. It might be a distraction for a player like Ackliouche. He'll take a year a bit, maybe to acclimatize to the league if we buy him. But he might be someone that the owners do take a chance on. But let me know what you guys think. So that's the concluding part of the show, guys. We've reached all the players that I wanted to talk about. I've left, let me know what you guys think. I'm going to go into the comments. There's only one player I can mention, but I'm not going to go deeply into him, only because he meets a lot of our attributes, but just not. He plays on the left. He plays on the left, even though he's right-footed. No, he's left-footed. No, I'm not going to mention him. I don't think Newcastle will go for him. But if I'm wrong, I can't prove it. Karim Adeyemi and Ronald Gittins, who actually done very well in the Champions League recently as well. I'm going to bypass them though, because they're both left-sided players, and if that's where they've been successful at, and they can play on the right side, but especially Karim Adeyemi can play on the right side. His contract runs out in 2027, currently valued at 40 million. He might be someone that Newcastle might look at. And if there's news about him, I'll do a little bit more on him. But the players that we have mentioned, Bryan Mbeumo, Francisco Trincao, Johan Bokayo, Maghnas Ackliouche. All of these guys have similar traits to your Noni Madueke, to your Michael Olise's, the guys that Newcastle were really looking to recruit in the summer. Let me know, guys, and I'm going to cast a vote soon on X as well. If after hearing about these players, who would you guys go for? Who would be the player that you would want Newcastle to be able to get in January? And who do you think the player they're likely to get? Because who we want might not be who we get. So, for instance, out of all the players that we've talked about, I think Bryan Mbeumo stands out head and shoulders because I think he hits a lot of buttons for Paul Mitchell and Eddie Howe. He's got that Premier League experience, he's got the technical ability, athletic ability, but also he might come for a decent price, maybe between 40 to 50 million in the January transfer window for Newcastle United. And it's a plug and play. He goes straight into our squad and can really, really change our fortunes. However, it's a very, very difficult deal. And I think it's about 5 to 10% chance probability of it happening. But if you're looking at your Francisco Trincaos, who, yes, he's got, he'll have 18 months left in January. He's about 50 million on his contract, and over Francisco Trincao, he's played in the Premier League before. He might be something to look at. I have a sneaky feeling that maybe with Maghnas Ackliouche, that will be very much a Paul Mitchell signing. And if they can get him between 20 to 30 million euros, it might be someone that Newcastle owners might hit the button on. You never know. So, Bryan Mbeumo would definitely be my number one choice, but I wouldn't be surprised if they get a Maghnas Ackliouche type of signing instead. So, young player, 22 years old in particular, who can develop under Eddie Howe's tutelage. That would be my take, but let me know what you guys think. So, I'm going to conclude the show. I'm going to read the comments and then conclude the show. But look, we've talked about so much in the show. We've talked about Bryan Mbeumo, the news around him. We've talked about all the right wing players from that Newcastle were looking at in the summer. In Noni Madueke, in Michael Olise, we used them as a point of reference to the players. Now we looked at their stats, their skills, their ability, progressing, carrying, goal creation are kind of the chief aspects I think that they were looking at as well. We were looking at players from Francis Trincao, from Johan Bokayo, Maghnas Ackliouche, excuse me. Even though I like Francis Trincao a lot as well. Bryan Mbeumo, what's the likelihood of him happening? Guys, let me know who you would choose. Who would you go for? Let me know. Let me read the comments before we close out. Jonathan Shaw. I feel like I'm losing my voice. Right. We have to sell one of our big hitters. Hard as that may sound, would people sell Isak for 120 million and get 3 quality additions? But a sweet deal, but it would arguably make us stronger. I read Paul Mitchell's article, the 90-minute interview, and selling big hitters is something that they're going to do their best to avoid, especially if those players are happy to stay at Newcastle. What they're going to try and do is try and buy, we talked about Maghnas Ackliouche, but they'll try and buy a Maghnas Ackliouche type of player who's more like 17, 18, 19, develop them and sell them on for more money so they can avoid selling your Isaks and your Gordons and stuff like that. It doesn't mean that it won't happen, but I think it's something that Paul Mitchell, Eddie Howe, the owners are working very, very hard to avoid doing. So, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Davey Eddie, like the look of them, lad. Like the lad from Sporting Lisbon. So do I. More than the lad from the Dutch league. Yeah. Ackliouche could be very interesting. I'm sure Paul Mitchell knows all about him. I agree, Davey. I agree, and he does. He does indeed. Davey Eddie, Jonathan. Jonathan. Okay, Jonathan. This is Jonathan. we may well have to sell. And yes, it could be Isak, even Bruno, hate to say it, but needs must, tough love. And we can't be afraid to sell our big players if we have to. We can't be afraid. Liverpool sold Coutinho. Man City sold, Chelsea sold so many players. At the time, they didn't know how big they were going to be, but they sold big players. Man City sold big players. Man United sold Ronaldo. This is everyday things. Jonathan Shaw, Davey, tough love, but needed. Exactly. Davey Eddie. And Mbuemo for me, Philip. Then the lad from Monaco from the ones mentioned. Yeah, very good. Very interesting as well. Davey Eddie, good show, Philip. Enjoy that. Thanks. I'm glad. And that ends it for me, guys. Guys, I'm very, very happy that you guys enjoy the show. I hope you've had a good evening. We've talked about so many things. We've talked about the right wingers, the right wing options for Newcastle United. We talked about the traits, ball retention, progressive carrying. We talked about their stats, ball received, what it means, what kind of player Newcastle are looking for. Athletic player, high technical ceiling, creative players. So whoever comes in is going to be very, very exciting, I believe as well. But are they going to come in this January? And if they are, it's going to have to be one hell of a deal. Bryan Mbeumo will be exceptional buy if we can get him over the line. But I think, in my opinion, we're probably the more likelihood is we're going to probably get a Maghnas Ackliouche type of signing, a young player from a club like Monaco who might be in a position that they would sell and make money on as well, and somebody that Paul Mitchell will know and will be able to kind of advise Eddie Howe on. But let me know, guys. I'm going to put out a vote on X. I'm going to put all these all these names on X, and I'm going to get your vote based on this show. Who would you guys go for? First of all, there'll be two questions. Who would you go for, and who do you think is the more likely signing in January for Newcastle United, if these were the options available to them? But folks, you have all been incredible. I did a lot of times researching this stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys had a good time, a good show. I thoroughly enjoyed the comments. I thoroughly enjoyed you guys being here. But make sure you have a great evening. Take care of yourselves. And as always, guys, God bless, folks.
Brilliant from Shea. And now Murphy can take on the shot. Fabian Shea.